Hello and welcome to the Sixth Pillar Podcast, hosted by Chief Neil Gang and proudly produced by TECHNE Innovations. I'm Shalyn Finstad, and we're thrilled to welcome back Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman for his second appearance. A renowned author, speaker, former Army Ranger, and West Point psychology professor, he has spent over 25 years helping military and law enforcement build resilience through his Bulletproof Mind presentation. It's an honor to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman and his adorable service dog, Charlie. Chief Gang, the mic is yours.
Shalyn, thank you so much for that great introduction to our guest. Before I start, I want to thank everybody for being patient during this hiatus. As many of you know, I just retired in September, and I moved operations from California to North Carolina, and that's where I'm located now. So that's going to be a whole show by itself, a faith journey that I need to share with everybody about that, and just what that transition feels like when you retire, because you can prepare for that, but there's a lot of things that happen that you never expect. So I want to thank the amazing team at TECHNE Innovations, Matt and Shalyn. They're just amazing people. Reach out for all your tech needs, your podcast needs, websites, app development, whatever you need, reach out to two of them. Really, really amazing people. And they are what drives this podcast. A lot of people ask about Six Pillar. What is that? Like, where did that come from? But Six Pillar comes from the 21st century policing model that was developed several years ago. They talked about critical aspects to help policing be successful. And they came up with 6 pillars, and they put those critical components in those 6 pillars. Where I disagree with them is that I think pillar number 1 should be officer wellness and resiliency. I think unless you have a strong pillar of organizational wellness, of resiliency, and your people are healthy enough to do the job, the other 5 other pillars don't make a difference. So I'm super excited about kicking off 2025 with my friend and a friend of the show, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. There's somebody in this profession that I run into a lot, and her name is Sherry Martin. She works for the FOP. And we've talked about speakers. We talked about people that go out there and are now, quote unquote, keynote speakers. And she said this quote. She said, there are people in the business to make a buck. There are people in the business to make a living. And there's people in the business to make a difference. And that's who we have today. Someone who's made a difference for 30 years, I'd imagine. Lieutenant Grossman's been doing this, coming out and talking to law enforcement, first responders, leaving us with a message and making the profession better by the words that he gives us. For anybody that knows the show, they know that I always start off with a Bible verse. And I think it's fitting that this Bible verse is right at the new year as we start the new year. And it comes from Isaiah 43, 18, 19. And I'll read it to you. It says, forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. How important is that for many of us as we start this next year? He said, see, I am doing a new thing. Now it's sprung up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. I think that's such a great message for many of us who want to put things behind us, have New Year's resolutions, and be able to move forward. I think many of us had a trying year in 2024, and I pray, and the message that I have for everybody out there, including my guest today, is that we all thrive in 25. And it's a prayer for you, it's a prayer for all our listeners, that we all thrive in 2025. So with no further delay, I like to bring on a great friend of mine, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. Dave, it's so great to see you again.
Hello, Neil. So good to be on board with you. And hey, you're one of those people that I told when you retire, the world is going to be your oyster. Everything you've done up to now is just preparation for what you're doing here. I retired in December 1997, and things have just rolled since then. You really, and all the people listening, you can really think of your career as a first step. And the good things are coming after you retire. And this is living evidence. You're living proof of it. And by the way, I'd echo what you say about a good team for the podcast. They're great people. Been a pleasure working with them. Anybody who needs somebody to do that, they should plug into those guys.
Well, great. So I know most people listen to this, they don't see the visual, but next year we'll be showing not just the audio, but also the visual recording. And when you do see that, you're going to see a special person. That's with Dave. And Dave's going to talk a little bit about that. Dave, tell us who your special guest is with you.
All right. Now, I want to say up front, Neil, that I present, and when I talk about law enforcement suicide, I hold you up as a definitive expert. And one of the things that's a critical part of wellness, and the opposite of suicide is wellness in so many ways, and the tool to fight that is wellness. And one of the great tools we have out there is the idea of a service dog. We're not meant to be alone. We're pack animals. One person alone in the park, alarm bells go off. You see somebody walking the dog in the park, no big deal. And you got one dog, you leave him alone at home, is solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is torture. One person in a cell. Two people in a cell, no big deal. Got two dogs leaving at home, they're fine. Well, we're pack animals too. We're not meant to be alone. And the problem is a lot of misconceptions about service dogs out there. And that service dog is always there. They go to the bathroom with you, they go to the store with you, they go everywhere with you. And this is my little service dog. I want to introduce everybody out there. This is Charlie. Charlie, say hi to the world out there. Charlie's got this great white stripe down his chest. You turn him upside down, he's a skunk. Charlie he's got a little vest on here, a service dog vest. And people see him, and right off the bat, I tell him, hey, this is Charlie. And my ears are shot, and I don't hear so good anymore. So Charlie lets me know when the alarm goes off in the morning. Charlie lets me know when someone knocking on the door. And there's no classes that have to be taken. There's no certification that has to be done. Don't let the dog embarrass us. But you go to YouTube or go to Amazon, order a vest, order the service dog patch, just put it on and rock and roll. There's a very small hoop you have to go through before going on airline. Once you've done that, there's a Department of Transportation form. Once you've done that, that's all you need. And most service dogs are Rolex. There's nothing wrong with the Rolex, nothing wrong with selling one, nothing wrong with buying one. But Charlie's a Timex. And I spent more than a quarter of a century out on the road here, alone in hotel rooms every night. We're not meant to be alone. And it's a good feeling to have Charlie there with me now. And he can't always travel. He's still learning. When I do short presentations, he's good. But the thing to understand is, I carry him in a little sling. He's 8 pounds a dog. He's in a little sling. Everybody loves him. People see him. They smile. And just, if you ever had trouble rolling out of bed in the morning, if you ever had trouble hearing that alarm clock and registering that alarm clock, then you need a service dog. Charlie, it really, really is. Those days when you can't quite roll it, Charlie is merciless. That alarm goes off and he's in my face. And the message is really clear. Time to get up. Food is waiting and I got to go pee. And if you don't get up, I'm going to pee and it's your fault. And you roll out of bed with energy and vigor and companionship from the very first moments. But just so you know, you don't need a big old dog. That little miniature poodle, smart little guy, got a great heart, totally selfish and self-centered, little sociopath, little narcissistic sociopath here. But he's a good little guy and he's good company. And I just want to let y'all know out there, when you talk about wellness and when you talk about sustaining yourself across the years, you can go get a Timex. And I get a good dog. I gave him my little sling. If you want more information, we'll talk about it. But just one of the pillars of this wellness is fellowship and teamwork and friendship. And that dog can be the first step in that process. We're not meant to be alone. And so that's my little 2 bits up front and why Charlie's sitting here and what that's all about.
Yeah, I think that's extremely interesting to hear what the roles that they can play, like the alarm clock and ears. I think there's things out there that are misconceptions about service dogs. And I think that there's definitely needs to be some clarity out there. And I'm a big proponent of it. We had a service dog for our agency, but now as you're getting ready to retire and you're seeing the different things that are occurring, I do think that the service dogs are really going to play a vital role for people to be successful in retirement. So I'm glad that you shared that. Can you just bring us that? What made you make the decision to get Charlie and to proceed down that path?
Well, during the pandemic, we got another dog, and he was so smart, and he was such good company, and so disciplined. And truly, I was having trouble with the pandemic, get rolling out of bed in the morning, and when the alarm goes off, still having discipline. And Charlie just fell into that gap. And I realized, hey, this is a service dog. And he did some research. I called hearing dogs. We got seeing eye dogs, we got hearing dogs or deafness dogs. And truly, no baloney, totally the truth. If you have any trouble rolling out of bed in the morning, then you can justify a little 5-pound Yorkie, a little 6-pound miniature poodle. I carry him everywhere. He's in a little sling with me. He goes everywhere. People love him. They smile. He's got a little service vest that says service dog, but it also says asked to pet. Most service dogs, they don't want you to pet them. They're working, but Charlie's a different kind of service dog. He doesn't mind being petted. His job starts first thing in the morning. letting goose off for the rest of the day. So there's more to it than that. The wellness and fellowship. I love it on planes. I love kids around him. Kids see him. I introduce him, explain my ears are going bad, and I have trouble getting up sometimes in the morning. And Charlie lets me know when the alarm goes off. And really, legally, all anybody is authorized at is this a service dog trained to provide a service? Yes. What is the service? I'm a retired veteran. I have a little hearing loss, and Charlie lets me know when the alarm goes off in the morning. He lets me know someone's knocking on the door. The other day I was in the shower. He let me know my phone was going off. And boom, that's one of the greatest services anybody could ever provide is get you out of bed in the morning. And there's no great classes, no federal certification. People don't realize that. There's no hoops you got to jump through. Get a good dog, train them well, and it's natural for them to get you up in the morning. They don't take no training. Real quick, the alarm goes off. The day starts with energy and vigor and happiness. And you can't help but be a little bit blessed by that, and then have that companion with you for the rest of the time. It's a good thing, and it's a wellness issue. And there's so many misconceptions about that field that I've been able to clarify with time. I think there's value to that.
Yeah, I think it's important that the listeners hear that and to understand the importance of what a service dog can do. So you and I've talked. Last time we met, we talked a little bit about sleep deprivation. We talked a lot about toxic leadership. And, it seems like almost people out there on LinkedIn now all want to be famous. I didn't understand that. I don't know where this came from, where law enforcement officers, they serve the community, and then all of a sudden something happens and now they want to be famous. And I just found out now some of them are hiring publicists and all these different things. So we're talking to somebody who's sustained going out there to be a keynote speaker for the last 20, 30 years. And I think Sherry Martin hit it on the head that some people are in it to make a buck and some people are in it to make a difference. And Dave, you've been making a difference for many years. So how do you stay relevant? What's important out there for our listeners to hear in 2025? I know we want to talk about some crime stats. I think that people are not familiar with just how bad things are going on in our world. So why don't you share a little bit about that?
Let's start with that, and then let's just spend a few minutes on faith. That's one of the pillars of resiliency. But when I teach the Bulletproof Mind, resiliency, and the first step really is motivation. To know that your sacrifice is for a noble and worthy purpose. To understand how much the world needs what you have to give. And things are bad, folks. Things are crazy bad. Now, I ask my audience, hey, what's the opposite of evil? And the opposite of evil is love. Evil is absence of love, just as darkness is absence of light. And how do we fight evil with love? And love means the worse you get, the harder you fight. And things are bad. And if we love our family, if we love our children, I got a grandson deployed to Kuwait right now. If we love our grandchildren, if we love our God, if we love our nation, the worse it gets, harder we fight. And things are bad. Things are crazy bad. Now, you're never going to be a famous celebrity in this business, at least not in a good way, right? And there's nothing wrong with those who have been in an incident with courage and honor, getting a publicist, rock on. I work with a couple of people. I run into them year after year. They're out there. A man shot 16 times, the rifle rescue in the Sikh massacre, the Sikh temple massacre, Lieutenant Brian Murphy. When he starts talking, he's got this hoarse voice. And you say, what's about this guy? Didn't realize he'd been shot in the throat. He'd been shot, I think, 14, 15 times. And it got a story to tell and a story to hear. Another one I with is Greg Stevens. In May of 2010, at Draw the Prophet Muhammad Art Festival outside of Dallas, Texas, 2 art critics from Arizona showed up. They had rifles, they had body armor, the element of surprise. Could have been the Pulse nightclub times 2. They rolled out of the vehicle and a 59-year-old traffic cop with a pistol killed them both. One of the greatest feats of marksmanship and courage in American history. Over 30 rounds of rifle fire fired at Greg Stevens, didn't hit once. Greg virtually every shot fired. Now, there's a man that deserves to be remembered. When Brian Murphy deserved to be remembered, yet how many people have heard about him? We need to get their message out there, but you're never going to be a famous celebrity, at least not in a good way. We can name a couple of bad ones that we could remember, and it's tragic. You're never going to be stinking, filthy American dream rich, at least not legally. When you chose this profession, you chose a life of sacrifice. And you got to know your sacrifice for a noble and worthy purpose. So what would it be like if we had one day without justice? That's what defund the police want. Now think about this, one day without justice. empty all the prisons as part of their agenda, get rid of all the cops, what would it be like? Well, some of us remember the movie The Purge. In The Purge, they turned off the murder law for one day. And it was chaos and despair. Well, The Purge didn't empty all the prisons. The Purge didn't turn off all laws. The Purge was just for one day. It would be chaos and despair. The baseline of every civilization is public safety, that we're safe and secure and not a danger. I call it the social contract. If Pharaoh, the Romans, us, we have the same deal. Here's the government. You obey the law, you pay your taxes, and we'll help keep you safe. Ain't that the deal? Obey the law, pay your taxes, we'll keep you safe. If we can't keep them safe, why would they obey your stinking laws? Why would they pay your stinking taxes if you can't even fulfill the basic responsibility of keeping them safe? So this is the vital ingredient. And if you understand how bad it is, then you're motivated to stay in the fight. And helping understand how bad it is the solution to the problem. We are a wealthy nation. When things are wrong, we throw money at it. So we won World War II. We threw money at it. We're the arsenal of democracy. Russia really took most of the brunt, but half of Russia's equipment was from us. And the Cold War, we outspent the Russians. We all saw the pandemic. What did we do? We threw trillions of dollars at it. When the American public begins to realize how stinking bad the crime situation really is, they'll start throwing money at that. Right now, law enforcement recruiting is down, retention is down. What happens when nobody wants to do this job? So let's talk about how bad it is. And the first thing I want you to understand is the murder rate is being held down by medical technology. The number of dead people is a lie. We got one good data point between the 1960s, 1970s, peer-reviewed article by a UMass Harvard team. Between the 60s and the 70s, of the 60s and the 90s, medical technology cut the murder rate to a third or quarter would otherwise be. That is, to compare the murders in the 90s with the 60s, you got to multiply the murders in the 90s by a factor of 3 or 4. And the life-saving technology since the 1990s is astounding. Tourniquets alone have cut the murder rate in half in just the last decade. Cop slaps on a tourniquet, saves the crime victim's life with preventative murder. So understand that the number of dead people is a lie. And imagine somebody said, your grandpa made 25 cents an hour. This job pays $25 an hour. You're 100 times richer than your grandpa. That's your BS meter going off. We all know that to compare money over a period of time, you got to allow for inflation. And to compare the murder rate over any period of time, you got to allow for medical technology. I had the honor to talk with the FBI guys earlier this year who were actually tabulating this kind of data. And they were blown away by this. This is Nobel Prize type stuff. Nobody on the planet is doing this. Just like I was invited to the White House twice, and I told the vice president I said, just like we have inflation-adjusted dollars, we need medically adjusted murders. And when we do that, it will transform the way we see the situation. So the press out there says, oh, it's all hunky-dory. Every politician, oh, it's all better now. No, it's not. No, it's not. And you know it. And the public knows it. So first understand that medical technology is holding us down. It's much, much worse than it looks. Now, the amazing thing about violence is how incredibly rare it is. We have about 50 murders a day across America. So if that averages out, now this is very rough average and high and low, but we have about 1 per state per day. Now it's not concentrated that way. It's all concentrated, but 1 per state per day. That's astounding. And what you got to understand is we have roughly 50 homicides a day. If just 20 or 30 times a day, we slap on a tourniquet, save a crime victim's life, we cut the murder in half. Now, I train our nation's largest fire EMS service many times a year across many years. They say, Dave, in our city alone, 20 to 30 times a day, we slap on a tourniquet and save a crime victim's life in our city alone. It's much less worse than it looks. So understand that. Now let's talk about recent events. In 2014, 2015, homicides exploded like nothing we've ever seen before. And that was the Ferguson effect. This message that the cops are evil and the criminals are the good guys. But then we had the George Floyd effect. In 2020, Homicides exploded, 3 times greater annual increase than anything we've ever seen. And when you allow for medical technology, it's even orders of magnitude worse than that. And the FBI is all over this. The George Floyd effect has started in May of 2020. And this sick message that the criminals are the good guys and the cops are the bad guys. This is the most destructive message any civilization could possibly embrace. That law and order is bad and crime is good. But you got to understand where they're coming from. It's this idea that the world breaks into the oppressor and the oppressed. And there's value to that, but everything has to be taken in a balanced manner. And they say that the criminals are oppressed and the cops are the oppressors. And the oppressed can do whatever they want because they're oppressed. And the oppressor is always a bad guy and they deserve whatever they get. And so these people with this mindset have rationalized the terrible, terrible massacre of over 1,000 people October 7th in Israel. Over 1,200 people murdered, babies and children slaughtered and raped. Oh, they were the oppressors. They got it coming to them. Yeah, you can't get inside of their head unless you understand where they're coming from. They were the oppressors and they deserve it. And the Palestinians, they were oppressed and they do whatever they want. And so this twisted narrative, we got to confront it. And here's the key. When the American public understands how bad it is, they'll start throwing money at this problem. The person who decides whether or not to shoot your kid should be the best trained, best paid, best qualified guy on the planet. And you will start seeing law enforcement paid the kind of money that medical professionals receive. Now, my dad was a cop in Cheyenne, Wyoming, starting in the 1960s. If you'd have told my dad that cops make as much money as they do now, even allowing for inflation, if you'd have told my dad cops make this kind of money, he would have never believed it. What's going to happen in the future is going to take this all to a new step. And this is a beautiful and good thing. Now, help me get the word out. Tell people, just like we have inflation-adjusted dollars, we need medically adjusted murders. Nobody can deny it. Medical technology is holding down the murder rate. It's a lie. Now, another piece of the equation I want to give you then. We got some graphics here. I want you to understand that in 2020, all-time record number of cops shot in the line of duty. How many saw that in the headlines? All-time record number of cops shot. Now, body armor and medical technology hold down the body. How many knew that 2023 was the all-time record number of cops shot? And I asked cops nationwide, what do you do about that? They said, we know what to do. We don't go to that part of town no more. We'd have not be assassinated. We'd have not be executed. We just don't go to that part of town no more. That part of town no longer is justice. I start every class with the Pledge of Allegiance. So everybody, thank you. Please be seated. What were the last 3 words you just said? Justice for all. Justice for all. And that part of the city, they ain't got justice no more. The cops aren't there anymore. They don't call in crime. They don't report crime. Murders are generally reported. Dead bodies have to be dealt with. A murder is probably pretty good data, but other than that, everything else is just what they report to the cops. And the cops are not necessarily, we got agencies aren't reporting the FBI anymore. Well, we have 2 crime reports, and it's really pretty important. One is what the cops report to the FBI. And if the public doesn't report it to the cops don't report it to the FBI. Everything's all PG keyed. But the other one is a National Crime Victimization Survey. And every year we call thousands of people. Were you a victim of rape? Were you a victim of assault? Were you a victim of robbery? And we got the National Crime Victimization Survey. Now, I've been keeping track of crime data since the 1980s. My first book came out in 1995, and throughout the 1980s, I was tracking crime data. And 2 crime reports, UCR, Uniform Crime Report, and the Crime Victim Survey. And we always knew the Crime Victim Survey was underreporting. They don't have phones in that part of the city. The migrant community doesn't have telephones, and we're not getting that data. But now it's completely flip-flopped. And the UCR is badly, badly underreporting. And as bad as it is, the Crime Victimization Survey is the best we got. So let's take a look at the crime data from 21 to 22. In 21 to 22, total violent crime, the Uniform Crime Report down 2%. Survey says up 75%. Homicide. Well, funny thing, every year we call thousands of people. Never once somebody said, yep, I was victim of homicide. Never once. Homicide victims can't speak for themselves. Cops, you are the speaker for the dead. You're the one who speaks for them. They can't speak for themselves. But the UCR says homicide down 7%. Baloney. Rape, UCR down 6%. Survey says up 58%. Robbery up 1%. Survey says up 40%. But here's the big one. Aggravated assault. Now let's stop there. Stop here. Understand this. Don't call it a pity party here. But interpersonal human aggression is the most psychologically toxic thing any human being will ever face. Now, the DSM, the Bible of psychiatry and psychology, talking about PTSD, says whenever the cause of your trauma is human in nature, the degree of trauma is usually more severe and long-lasting. So I ask people, you tell me, is it different between these two scenarios? Scenario one, tornado hits a house while you're gone, puts your family in the hospital. How do you feel about that one? Thank God they're alive. Scenario two, criminals break in the house while you're gone and beat your family to hospital stay. Now you feel any different? It's all the difference in the world, folks. Don't cop a pity party. But violent crime, interpersonal human aggression, is the most psychologically toxic, destructive thing any human being will ever face. And that's what we're talking about here. It's a cancer of crime. It's a virus of violence. It is the most destructive ingredient in any civilization. And it's your job to go deal with it and to be there for that. We'll talk about that. So let's go then to ag assault. Remember, ag assault is a murder that medical technology saved their lives and all. And ag assault, the Uniform Crime Report says down 2%. Survey says up 104%. It's bad, folks. It's crazy bad. And the worst thing of all is it's not being reported. And you got to understand it. So here's one other piece of the equation. We can change gears now and switch to another vital pillar of resiliency. But this is how serious bad it is, and how we got to deal with it. How we got to believe it as what's the opposite of evil? Love. Empathy is love in action. Empathy is love with its shoes on. You know what makes a great first responder? Empathy. What if my family trapped in that burning building? What if my child had been murdered? What if my spouse had been assaulted? That's empathy. And that's love with the shoes on. And so as we love our family, as we love our way of life, as we love our days, we love our God. Love means the worse it gets, harder we fight. And it's bad out there. And believe in who you are, believe in what you do. Jesus said, greater love is no one than this, that they lay down their life for their friends. So what manner of love is this? That men and women will lay their life down for strangers. What manner of love is this? That men and women will walk out that door and take a bullet for someone they never even met. So the first stage then, we covered the service dog. We talked about crime data, how bad it is, how much the world needs it. Let's roll into another subject. But first, I've been monopolizing, Neil. Does this all make sense from your perspective? Does it fit in with your picture?
Oh, absolutely. I think that law enforcement has said for years that the crime stats were inaccurate. I think part of the issue at one point were leaders also not putting out the correct crime stats, actually minimizing the crime stats so them as a leader look better, right? So they weren't worried about the organization. They weren't worried about the crime stats being accurate in the community. They were worried about them being successful as a police chief or a police commander or whatever it is, fill in the blank, where now you're starting to, roll down crimes into lesser crimes. And then it looks like, hey, as a leader, my agency has now reduced crime in the city, when that was actually a false narrative. That was not happening. But yet
it's a wink and nod type thing. The crime stats, or New York City crime stat, good idea, good concept. But you say precinct commander, you get aggravated assault down, or I'll find somebody who can. Ag assault is like grade inflation in the school. Other than murder, it's all a judgment call. Where do we draw that magic line? Ag assault and simple assault. You want ag assault down? That's no longer ag assault. That's simple assault. Boom. And nobody has to lie. It's just this little gray area. And the leadership puts pressure on, and down the ranks they say, well, but then it goes to even hiding murders. I've had people tell me that their department doesn't report. If it's not a murder in the first 24 hours, it doesn't get reported. And one guy said that he said, hey, Sarge, he was murdered. He's dead. That coroner, you don't know that. We're going to wait till the coroner tells us. And by then the crime stats have moved on and that murder didn't get reported. So yeah, there's just this real dynamic to hide the truth. And that is evil. And this is wink and nod. You bring it down. Okay, we'll bring it down. And so like grade inflation in the school, and we take that gray area and we measure it the way we want it to. And that's just one of the most harmful and tragic things we could possibly do. to let people know how really seriously bad it is. But yeah,
Oh, well, I think that society in general, I mean, look at the city managers that are out there that are evaluating how their police chief is leading the organization by the crime stats, right? And that creates an opportunity for a chief to say, hey, I need to worry about my future. And now we're turning arsons into criminal damages. There's an agency that I'm familiar with that would take the original crime of, let's say, the ag assault. And if the person died in the hospital a day or two later, they wouldn't update the stat.
Yeah.
It would stay as an ag assault. So again, manipulation, and I think it's systemic around the country. I don't think it's one particular area, but again, the success of a chief, the success of an organization is placated on whether or not they have reduced crime in their city. When, let's be honest, the police really don't have a lot that we could do to reduce crime. You could do some proactive things. Let's talk about community policing and all those things. But the bottom line is the crime stats are the crime stats. And I've always been a proponent, whatever they are, and let's just report out accurate numbers what we can. But unfortunately, that's not the same idea, the same philosophy that many leaders in this profession have at this point.
One of the things we have is a large portion of our law enforcement leadership are elected. And I was in England quite a while back and working with one of their Kent County Constabulary, and we had like their number 2, number 3 guy with me at lunch. I said, you Americans, you elect your law enforcement leaders. Now, I'm going to find some guy and elect him to be my dentist. Well, I see where you're coming from. But the truth is that it works. You trust the American public that the police chief can be fired by half a dozen people on any given day, but the sheriff can only be fired by 51% of the voters once every 4 years. And the police chief is a real politician out there having to bend to the political winds. There's so much pressure on them, and the sheriff doesn't have to. So that even there are people trying to get reelected and manipulating things. So it is so critically important that we accurately report the situation. It is an ethical failure, staggering magnitude. We're not doing it. And again, as we have medically adjusted, inflation adjusted money, we need medically adjusted murders. Hey, the other half of the equation, though, I want to talk about is faith. And one of the pillars of resilience around the world is faith. And I've been telling all my classes, I said, this is not about religion. This is an existential question that every human being asks. Hey, your job is to go to every bad thing that happens. The worst thing in your city, that's where you go today. And you can't help but ask the question, how can a loving God allow these terrible things to happen? And that's a really important question. And the answer is really, really important. And what almost every religion on the planet would tell you, we are not God's puppets. A loving father would not hang over your shoulder every minute of every day, manipulating everything that happens. In the end, we're all going to die. No matter how much you pray, you're going to die. Did God fail? No, not. But see, here's the thing. You ever heard if you love something, let it go? If it comes back, it's really yours. That's how much God loves us. He loves us enough to let us make our own decision. That means a lot of people make really bad decisions. A lot of really bad things happen. You say, God, why don't you do something? He said, Dad, I sent you. You are his instrument. And you got to understand that. And terrible things are going to happen. And it's our job to get in front of that. And that comes back to empathy. Love with the shoes on. Say, what if my family had been assaulted? What if my spouse had been murdered? And that's empathy. And that's where we got to go. And that's love. And God said that these two things, to love God and to love people, that's everything. That's the whole goal. Jesus said, a new commandment I give you, to love others as I have loved you. Boom, our mission is to love. And if we love people, we'll try to protect them, and we'll try to be there for them in our greatest need. So faith is one of the pillars of resiliency. And the thing to understand, if you're a person of faith, you can lean into that. In the end, everybody's going to die. A few more years on this earth are not that big a deal. In the end, every nation will fall over my dead body. In the end, our son will die. But eternity continues. And if you're a person of faith, God's greatest gift is not a few more years on this earth, a little less. God's greatest gift is eternity in heaven. And don't get mad. God doesn't answer prayers the way you think he should answer. The greatest gift of all is that eternity in heaven, and that's what he's moving towards in so many ways. So just recognize that terrible things are going to happen because we've been given free will. We've been given the opportunity to make our own decisions. And as for me and my house, we've decided to serve justice. We've decided to stand up for the poor. We've decided to stand up for the helpless. Right now, one of the largest economic growth is in personal security. Every politician, everybody's got money to spare. They're getting bodyguards, baby. But the cop is a bodyguard for the poor. And when the cops ain't there, then the poor pay the price. And you can't hide this. The police chief hides the crime data. The sheriff hides the crime data. The mayor hides the crime data. You're not fooling anybody. The people know that they're being assaulted. The people know that they're being raped. The people know that loved ones are being murdered. They know that. They know exactly what's happening. And it is the single most toxic thing happening in anybody's life. And you're hiding it. And that's the most harmful thing you could possibly do, instead of confronting it and dealing with it and letting people know we understand. And again, don't lose track of that. Interpersonal human aggression, demonstratively, irrefutably, violent crime is the most destructive thing that could happen to a human being, and it's your job. And so lean into that faith. And I got a couple of things I recommend for you. One of our books is Prayers and Promises for First Responders. And it's been quite a nice bestseller. It's just a bunch of nuggets. Go to my website, grossman.com. I wrote the book on spiritual combat. Now, my book on killing and on combat are Marine Corps Commandant's required reading list. And the whole time I said, I know Grossman's on combat. What's it got to say about on spiritual combat? And boom, here it is. Just basic training, nuts and bolts. We all need to know the foundation, equipment issue, Ephesians chapter 6, and the basic combat drills that we need. One of the things we can do is roll our faith into our relationship. Bulletproof Marriage, 90-day devotional, Christian Book Award finalist. And you and your spouse, 10 minutes a day, just 10 minutes a day together. It's useful to go to Amazon and look at the reviews for this book. We wrote this book, and my co-author and I, Adam Davis, amazing guy. Would anybody really do that? 10 minutes a day for 90 days? Oh, yeah. Go to Amazon.com, look at the reviews. Look at the people who've gone through and done that. I was training in the military unit, and I was at the kind of book table during the break and signing and selling books, right? And a first sergeant comes up. I'm an old buck sergeant. I'm a lieutenant colonel. The first sergeant's still a scary guy. And the first sergeant tossed a copy of this book, Bulletproof Marriage, on the table in front of me and said, "Sir, I hold you personally responsible for all the arguments my wife and I had over this book." I thought, He said, "Now I go to Amazon, I buy them 5 at a time, and give one to all my married troops." Boom. The old first sergeant yanked my train pretty good there. But that's what's happening. You can leverage your faith into your relationship. We're working now, my co-author and I are working right now on a book called Bulletproof Family, and doing the same thing as a family, a covenant. The whole family agrees on standards and makes an agreement, and it's powerful. But then if you want to dive in deep on spiritual warfare, start with on spiritual combat, but this is deep, advanced warfare training. So all that's a way of saying that there's resources out there to leverage your faith. One of the pillars of resiliency, and I love being on your show, Neil, Chief. I love you start with a verse here from that faith perspective. I want everybody that's out there listening, that's not just something we do. It is vital. It is important to your wellness. If you're not wired that way, there's other ways to get on with that. But if you are a person of faith, then you can leverage that and use that to keep the big picture, and don't let the things of this world pull you down.
I think so much great information you just gave us. I think it's important that people understand that you can have faith in being law enforcement. I think there was such a terrible message, and it's still going around the country, where you can't have faith with government and we can't have those two interacting, but people got it wrong. And there's so many leaders out there that just are so afraid to wear their faith on their sleeve. But I'm telling you, when you do that, there's such a release and there's such a feeling of, just like you said, empathetic, and it gives you a different way. It actually gives you a new set of eyes to look at the way we do our job and the way we live our lives. So again, if you're in a situation in an organization where they're telling you we can't talk about faith and we can't have these things, well, they're getting it wrong, and don't allow that to continue, because I think it's so important. But Dave, in your career, have you seen that? Have you heard people talk about, well, I'm a police officer, I can't talk about my faith at work?
Yeah. And let's start with kind of the foundation lie. Is "thou shalt not kill." If you use deadly force, you committed the ultimate sin. No, that's not true. The proper translation all the Jewish translations, original Hebrew, commandments originally in Hebrew, all the Jewish translations translate, you shall not murder. Almost all the modern translations translate, you shall not murder. It's very clear from the context that deadly force is authorized, but it's got to be under authority. It's got to be righteous application of violence in defense of lives. And so Jesus to work his way through the commandments, and he says, this is King James. King James, thou shalt not kill. Oh, go to where Jesus one of the commandments, and he says, thou shalt do no murder. If you can tell the difference between murder and lawful use of deadly force, maybe God can too. If there is a God, and he's the God of the Bible, he tells us over and over again, the magistrate beareth not the sword in vain, that you are an instrument to keep law and order, and you administer deadly force righteously. It is a good thing, and it is honored. And I presented, when I began my career in the speaking in the late 1980s, collecting data from my book on killing, I'd present to Vietnam veterans reunion, World War II reunions, and conduct interviews afterwards. And I talked about, it's not you shall not kill, it's you shall not murder. And so many of those guys, it just hammered them. That's, oh, how come I never heard that? How come I never knew that? They come up in tears. That nobody ever told me that. It's there, it's clear, it's irrefutable. And people are hurting because Hollywood, somebody waving a black book shouting, thou shalt not kill. Well, 99% of a religious faith across the centuries have believed the righteous application of deadly force is honorable and necessary and honors what you do. So that's really the foundation up front. And then to understand that God is a God of justice. He says over and over again, but in the back of On Spiritual Warfare, it's cool. We put a verse on the back of it, and it says just 6 words. Amos 5:15a. This is our mission in 6 words. Hate evil. We don't hate the person, but we hate the sin. Hate evil. Love good. Maintain justice. Boom. There's our mission in 6 words. Hate evil, love good, maintain justice. Boom. There's a job in 6 words. And it said over and over and over and over again that God is a God of justice, that the violent who use violence to attack the innocent, he stands up against them, and the cop is the instrument he uses. And then back to this goofy left-wing politics that we can't put religion out there. You absolutely can. And as a leader, it is one of the most powerful and effective and important things you can do. Even setting aside any kind of faith, eternal perspective, just the raw payoff on dipping into that faith is one of the pillars of resiliency. It is so important and so powerful. So that's a great point to make there, Neil. And we're going to dive into that with all of our hearts and realize this is a source of great strength that we can leverage into what we do.
Yeah. So that book is transformational. I read it. If you remember correctly, at the end of our show last time, I actually gave some books away to a couple of listeners, and I got great feedback from them as well.
That was On Spiritual Combat.
Yes, it was.
Combat. I wrote On Combat, then boom, On Spiritual Combat. And that was so cool. Yes, you did that. That was cool.
So we got a lot of feedback from that, and people reading the book, it just gave them a new set of eyes, gave them a different perspective, and it gave them something to really be helpful for. And I always share this one story. Like, I had an office, I won't say where I was in my career at the time, but I had a cross sitting on my desk, and I had somebody above myself, I believe it was a captain at the time, commander, walk into my office and said that the chief wants you to take that off your desk. And I said, well, I'm not going to take it off my desk. He goes, well, we're taking all these, we don't want any expressions of religion or anything else like that. And I said, well, you have the chief come tell me himself. Well, the chief never came down, and the cross on the cross sat on the desk until the day I left there to go to another organization. But there are leaders out there that are pushing that message that we can't have this in our organizations, and they could be more incorrect with that message.
And deeply harmful. Again, don't lose track of the fact that this is one of the pillars of resiliency. This is the foundation of who we are and what we do. Try to take that out of our lives, you're taking away. If you're a person that even remotely believes that there's a life after this life, then it's the most important thing in the universe. And you're taking that away from them is more than just wrong. It's evil and destructive to the organization.
Yeah, so last time we spoke, and we got a few minutes left here, we talked about sleep deprivation. You shared your eye mask that you got on Amazon.
Yeah.
I went out and bought one
Wow.
immediately, and it changed the way I slept. And then at each of my presentations now, I actually give one away for somebody who's willing to try one. So that's already made an adjustment from spending some time with you. We have a few minutes left. Dave, share where you're next. I know you're going to be at the FOP conference. I think that's in March, but tell your listeners where they can find you and maybe get an opportunity to spend some time with you.
My website is grossmanontruth.com. The truth on killing, the truth on combat, the truth on spiritual combat, grossmanontruth.com. And we got our online store there. We'll personalize things. We're doing a social media buzz. I'm such a science geek. My favorite website, sciencedaily.com. And it said, if you can personalize a gift, if you put somebody's name on the gift, it greatly amplifies the wellness and the contribution and the meaning of that gift. And so we said, contact us because we'll personalize any one of my books. We'll sign a book, we'll personalize it, and put it in their hands. And golly, the science says you really have amplified the contribution that gift will give by virtue of personalizing it. So grossmanontruth.com, we've got the website. You want to know about what we got coming up, you can ping. I got two awesome right-hand ladies, my vice presidents, that keep me out of trouble there, and they'll respond to anything and they pass it to me. Send us a message, get a book and ask us to put a message in it, grossmanontruth.com. And a blessed to all you were meant to just not survive, but to thrive in 25.
Amen to that. I'm going to share a message to all our first responders. I know we hear that it's okay to not be okay. That's fine. And there's a lot of people that are struggling, but here's something different. How about it's okay to be okay? It's okay to take some resiliency and into your own hands. It's okay to go get mental health checkups, to go get blood work. Don't wait for your organization. Don't wait for your leadership to provide that for you. You deserve it and your family deserves it. So it's okay to be okay. Listen, you are all needed, wanted, and appreciated. And I've always said that if one person can change the world, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman,
Neil Gang,
could change the entire world, then don't think you can't go back to your organization and change the organizational culture which you are currently in. So I'll say this, until next time, stay safe, healthy, and resilient. God bless you all.
God bless America.
We extend our gratitude to Chief Neil Gang for leading us through this exploration of wellness and leadership for our extraordinary first responders. This is Shalyn Finstead signing off on behalf of TECHNE Innovations and the Sixth Pillar Podcast. Be safe, and thank you for joining us.